My dog is humping his bed aggressively right now. Miles, stop. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Lauren. If you're new here, I'm all about slow fashion, sustainable shopping, and minimal styling, but with a twist. So we have new hair, we have a new background, we have a new video. So on this channel, I really like to make sure I look at everything through the lens of slow, sustainable fashion. So let's talk a bit about how understanding your coloring can really contribute to your ability to have a sustainable wardrobe. And for me, the biggest reason is that understanding your coloring allows you to make smart shopping choices. When you don't understand your coloring, it means that you don't understand what colors you love and what colors you love on you. And a lot of the time that can end up meaning that you are mindlessly buying items without really thinking about whether or not that color is flattering on you, whether or not you enjoy the way that color works with your natural coloring. But also it means that you're not putting a lot of thought into whether or not the colors you're purchasing match the colors you already own in your current wardrobe. So once you've figured out your coloring, you can really start to streamline your shopping habits and really start to streamline what you bring into your wardrobe to make sure that everything is cohesive, both with each other, but also with your coloring. A lot of the time, the colors that we love in art or in nature are not always going to be the colors that actually look best on us. And what colors look best on you is of course subjective. And I want to be really clear that there are no hard and fast rules here. I truly believe that rules are meant to be broken, but I heard Justine Leconte say something really wise the other day in one of her videos, which is that in order to break the rules, you have to know what they are first. And I think that is just such a great way to look at things. So let's learn some color rules, some color theory, and then we can talk a little bit about how we can use that knowledge moving forward as we build our sustainable wardrobes. I'd like to preface this by saying that I am in no way an expert on this. I have absolutely zero credentials in this topic. Everything I'm going to be sharing with you today is based on my own personal experience and on the research that I've done through my own personal style journey. So for me, there are two steps in determining your coloring. The first step is going to be determining your undertones. And you've probably heard that you can either be cool toned or warm toned. Now, there is this idea floating around that you can be neutral toned. I'm not sure, and this is just my opinion, but I'm not sure that anyone is actually completely neutral toned. I think that everybody at least leans cool or warm. And I think a lot of the time when people think they're neutral toned and they have a really hard time figuring out whether they're cool toned or warm toned, I think a lot of the time those people are actually olive, which I will get into in a second. So what are undertones? Well, my understanding is that your undertones are the colors that exist within your skin. So you have the coloring that's on the surface of your skin, the skin that you see every day, and that might vary depending on the season. It could vary with if you have any kind of skin condition, rosacea, acne, can impact the color of your skin on the surface, but your undertones, these are constant. They do not change. So how do we determine what our undertones are? I find that one of the easiest things to do is to actually take a selfie and make sure when you take that selfie, you're not wearing any makeup, or at least very, very minimal makeup, and make sure you're in full natural light, broad daylight. So you don't want to do this first thing in the morning or sort of at dusk. In the evening times, for example, sunsets are very warm toned. So that kind of lighting could impact your color read, and then you're not going to get an accurate result. So what you're going to want to look for in this photo is sort of a cast, a color cast. If you have lighter skin, you might notice that you have sort of like a pinky hue to your skin. Or you might notice that you have sort of like a yellowy cast to your skin. Now, if you have darker skin, you might notice maybe it's more of like a purpley blue hue, or it might be more of like an orangey red hue. So let's look at this picture of me as an example. Now, full disclosure, I am wearing a bit of makeup in this picture. This picture's a few years old. But I'm not wearing very much. I think I'm just wearing a bit of mascara and maybe a bit of concealer. So my color read's pretty accurate, and I'm standing in front of a window in full broad daylight. So let's have a look at this picture. So what color do you see other than just my skin tone? Do you see any kind of cast in sort of the corners of my nose, maybe on my cheeks, on my chest? Pink, right? So if you see a pinky cast, if you have lighter skin, or that sort of purpley blue cast if you have darker skin, that is usually a good indicator that you are cool toned. Now, if you were to see more of a yellow cast, if you have lighter skin, or more of that sort of orangey red cast if you have darker skin, that would be a good indicator that you probably have warm toned skin. But what if you can't see any of the colors that I just described in your cast? Well, it's possible that maybe you're one of these neutral unicorns. Maybe they do exist. I'm not an expert. Have a look again and see if maybe the cast you're seeing is green. And that is going to be a clear indicator that you have olive skin. Now, olive skin is really confusing for a lot of people because it's characterized by having really strong yellowy green overtones, but bluish undertones. And that's why you tend to look green, because blue mixed with yellow makes green. But the important part here when you're figuring out your coloring is not your overtone. So you can disregard that yellow overtone that's making you appear green. What we really care about is that undertone, which is in fact more sort of on the blue side. So that means that if you have olive skin, you are in fact cool toned. Always, always, always. So another way you can try to figure out your undertones is by looking at your veins. It's not really my favorite measure of your undertones, to be honest, because I think it's a lot harder for some people to see the color of their veins. That can be because of a variety of different things. It can have to do with transparency of your skin, how much melanin you have in your skin. All these things might make it hard for you to see your veins. So I don't really love that people tend to rely on that so much for this kind of color typing because it's not really very inclusive. If you can see your veins, this can be a helpful tool. So let's discuss it. I would recommend that you look at the color of your veins on a part of your skin that does not tend to get a lot of direct sunlight. So that would be maybe your wrists, maybe the inside of your forearm here. If your veins look a little bit more blue or purple, that's a good sign that you have cool undertones. If your veins tend to look a little bit more green, that's a good sign that you have warm undertones. Now, if you don't think your veins match any of those colors, or if some of your veins look more sort of bluey purple and some of your veins look more green, maybe you're a neutral unicorn, or maybe you're olive, which, remember, is cool toned. What happens if you can't figure this out based on those first two methods? So either you really just cannot figure out what colors you're seeing, or maybe you got one result for the first technique where we looked at the cast and you got a conflicting result when we looked at your veins. First of all, there's a good chance you might be olive, but if you don't think you're olive, there is one more test you can try, and that is the jewelry test. Now, this is another method that I don't really love, and that's because it's so subjective. If you knew what colors looked good on you, you wouldn't be here, right? So basically what the jewelry test is where you try on white gold or silver jewelry, and then you try on yellow gold jewelry, and you figure out which one makes you look more sort of healthy and vibrant and awake. And if you find that the silver tone jewelry looks better, you're probably cool toned. And if you find that the yellow gold jewelry looks better, you're probably warm toned. But again, if you knew what colors looked good on you, you wouldn't be watching my video. If you do find yourself having to resort to this method, please just bring in a friend or a family member to help you figure this out. So now that you've determined your undertones, the next step that I want to talk about is determining your chroma. So this, I don't find, is something that is talked about enough when we talk about our coloring and how to use that to develop our personal style. So what is chroma exactly? Well, my understanding of chroma is that it's really just the intensity of your coloring. So you might hear this called saturation or maybe brightness, but basically it's just looking at how intense are these colors that you have in your body. You can have two cool toned people, but one might have really high chroma, really intense coloring, and the other might have really low chroma, really soft coloring. Please don't confuse your chroma with how light or dark your coloring is. White, for example, is a really light color, but you can have really stark bright white, or you can have really sort of muted, softer whites. The same goes for black. You can have black that's really deep, strong, and saturated, but you can also have blacks that are sort of washed and a little bit more ashy. You can have a person who has light hair, light skin, light eyes, but who still has a very intense coloring, very high chroma. Similarly, you can have someone with very dark coloring, dark hair, dark eyes, dark skin, who has a very low chroma. And I just want to take a minute to clarify that there's no sort of value associated with either of these things. You might have a negative association with the word muted or ashy. These are not bad words. You can have an absolutely stunningly beautiful person who has soft, ashy coloring. I personally think that that coloring is very romantic and ethereal. So let's just make sure we let go of any judgments that we might be bringing to this color analysis. To determine your own chroma, we're going to go back to those pictures that we took before when we were looking at our undertone. The first thing you're going to look at is your hair color. Now, if you dye your hair, this result is obviously going to be skewed, but that's okay, because when we're getting dressed in the morning, we need to take our coloring as it is into account, as well as our natural coloring. Is your hair really vibrant and brightly colored? If you have a straighter hair texture, maybe it's really glossy and shiny. If the answer is yes, then you probably have a pretty high chroma. If your hair, on the other hand, is a little bit more matte, maybe it's a little bit softer in color, a little bit more ashy, then you probably have a low chroma. So in my example, my hair is quite soft and muted actually. So this is a good indicator that I have a pretty low chroma. The next thing we're going to look at is your lips. So again, very important that we're not wearing any lipstick or lip balms with color to them, okay? Do your lips have a lot of color to them? Do they have a lot of pigment that's really saturated? A good indicator here might be, do you find you have to put a lot of coats of lipstick on in order to hide the natural color? Or maybe you have to put a foundation base down first before you apply your lip color in order to get a true color read. If the answer is yes, then you might have a high chroma. If, on the other hand, your lips are quite pale in color, maybe they don't have a ton of color to them, just a little bit. If you find you can just put on one swipe of lipstick and you're good to go, you probably have a lower chroma. So in this example that we're using here of me, you can see my lips pretty much blend right into the rest of my face. And that is, again, another indicator that I have a low chroma. The last thing we're going to look at is your eyes. Now, be really careful with your eyes because it's easy to get confused by eyes that are very prominent in terms of shape or in terms of size, because that can lead you to believe that you have a high chroma because your eyes stand out. But that's not what we're looking at. We're not talking about shape or size today. We're just talking about color. So I want you to look at the iris of your eye. So the iris is the colored part that is around your pupil. Is that specific part of your eye a very bright, saturated color? Maybe it's bright blue, maybe it's bright green, maybe it's bright brown. If it's a really bright, saturated color, you probably have a high chroma. If your eye color is a little bit softer, a little bit more muted, maybe you have the kind of eyes where it's hard to tell what color it is, there's a good chance that you have a low chroma. This is something I actually had a really hard time with because I have really big eyes. I have really prominent eyes. And my whole life people said, oh my God, you have such big blue eyes. Your eyes are so blue. Really what I think people were struck by was the size and shape of my eyes, not the color. Because if you actually look at this picture, the color of my eyes is not actually that prominent. It's actually quite a soft sort of greeny blue. Now that you've figured out your undertones and your chroma, what's next? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in my next video, where I really dive into how we can use this information to build ourselves a beautiful color palette for our wardrobes that we really love. But I don't want to leave you guys with nothing today. I'm sure a lot of you came here looking for some advice on what colors to bring into your wardrobe. A good starting point when you're building a color palette for yourself is to match your chroma and your undertone. So if you have a cool undertone and a soft chroma, you're gonna wanna go for cool, soft colors. So for example, you might wanna try a sky blue or a lilac would be lovely. If you have cool undertones and a very high chroma, you are gonna wanna go for cool toned, vibrant colors. So an electric blue maybe, or an emerald green. If you have warm undertones and a low chroma, you are gonna wanna go for soft, warm colors. So maybe a peach would be a lovely choice for you. If you have warm undertones and a high chroma, you're gonna wanna go for really vibrant, warm colors. So maybe like a mustard yellow or a tangerine would be nice. But again, rules are meant to be broken. This is all very subjective, and the most important thing is that you feel good in what you're wearing. Don't worry about what other people think look good on you. Worry about what you feel good in. So I want to talk a lot more about this and how to figure that out for yourself in my next video, where we sort of will dive into a lot more of the detail and the theory behind building a color palette for yourself using this base knowledge of your coloring as a starting point, as a building block. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you found it inspirational. Make sure you give this video a like. Also, please subscribe if you're not already, and make sure you follow me over on Instagram for more outfit inspiration. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.